Welcome to the SpiritWoke podcast, podcasting from the beautiful city of Stillwater, the birthplace of Minnesota. Are you going through a spiritual awakening? Do you wish to learn more about continued spiritual growth and want to meet others who are on a similar journey? We hope that this podcast and its community can be a meaningful resource for you. The SpiritWoke podcast welcomes special guests from around the globe who share personal stories of their awakening journey, along with details of spiritual abilities they've developed along the way. So buckle up and get ready for this exciting episode. And now, here's your host, Adam Dins.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the SpiritWoke podcast. On this episode, we'll be speaking with Ann Jarvis, proprietor of Soulful Surrender, www.soulfulsurrender.com, about accessing our spirit guides. Ann is a seasoned intuitive energy healer and holistic nutritionist. In addition to that, Ann is a seer that loves working with and teaching others how to access the blueprints of their souls. Ann has a soft, gentle, and direct approach to help others wake up. And Ann resides in Ottawa, Ontario with her husband and their young daughter. But the most important thing is that Ann is with us today. So Ann, thank you so much for joining the SpiritWoke podcast.
Thank you for having me, Adam. I'm so excited to be here.
We're so thrilled to have you, and we're going to have a really fun conversation about a topic that a lot of people I've had a lot of conversations with, and it's written a lot about on, you know, if you're looking for information on spiritual awakening and spiritual guidance on the web, you're going to find a ton of information about spirit guides. And in fact, I know years ago, my uncle is really big into transcendental meditation. And, you know, I was young at the time and I didn't know about any of this cool stuff that we're talking about today, but he would always talk about his spirit guides that he'd see when he was meditating. And, I always thought it was really cool, and I didn't judge it or anything, but it just sounded fascinating that somebody could close their eyes and meditate and connect with these spirit guides that he felt such a connection to. And so I think the audience is going to get a really good amount of awesome information from you on this, Ann.
I hope so. Yeah, it's a really exciting topic, and I think a lot of people are really hungry for this kind of information.
Absolutely. Well, so Ann, before we jump into the questions, I also wanted to share that, you know, as I've gotten to know Ann over the past few months, I can testify to the fact that she is a wealth of knowledge across many different facets of spirituality. And we definitely hope to have Ann back again and again to talk about other areas of interest as it applies to spirituality. And so that being said, let's jump into our first question, Ann. And, you know, typically when we do the SpiritWoke podcast, I like to start with this question just as a baseline. And it's really about your spiritual awakening. So, Ann, would you mind telling our listeners about your awakening, you know, what sparked it, describe what the journey's been like, and if there's any advice that, you know, you could give to those just beginning their awakening or those who feel a bit stagnated maybe in their spiritual growth?
I would say my spiritual awakening started in my mid-20s. I had a lifelong illness called Crohn's disease. It's an autoimmune disease. And when I got sick, when I was a little girl, and I was even aware of it at the time, I got sick because that was really the first time I realized that I was able to see things intuitively. And I was able to see a dynamic that was unfolding within my family that was pretty unhealthy. And I knew what was happening. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I sort of, you know, as a typical spiritual introvert, I sort of stuffed everything, and I ended up getting quite sick. And so, you know, fast forward to my 20s, when I got really, really sick, ended up needing, quite a serious surgery for the Crohn's. You know, I just started asking those tough questions of the universe, that, you know, the big why. Why is this happening? What am I meant to learn? And that really launched me on my journey. And, you know, I find that's really common, that what tends to happen for people is they need a catalyst. They need some sort of a catalyst, and that often comes in the form of a challenge that they just can't get answers to, or from the typical authority figures that we want to get answers from, whether that be a doctor or a psychologist or your parents or a friend. You just, that's just not cutting it. And so you start looking sort of to the bigger picture. You might start asking a God that you weren't quite sure existed, or you might start asking the universe. You just might start asking a general why. Why is this happening? And that really tends to launch a lot of people onto their spiritual path.
Wow, that's fascinating. So Anne, when you were kind of going through this illness, and you were reaching out to the universe, what kind of feedback were you getting? Like, what kind of interactions were you having?
Yeah, so for me, I would start with little bits of guidance. So, for example, in my mid-20s, when I had to have this really serious surgery, for the first time since I was probably when I was 7, when I first got sick, and I was aware that I was able to see, some things unfolding that I normally shouldn't have seen. When I was 26 and in the hospital, I felt my grandfather all around me. And my grandfather had died about a year prior to my having this surgery. And I could just feel him everywhere. And it felt like I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be. I knew that this surgery was going to course correct at that time my life. It was going to completely shift gears with, where I had been going. And it did. That's exactly what happened. So that was sort of my first foray into getting actual, spiritual feedback that didn't come from anyone in physical form.
So was it like a knowing? Like, was it an instant knowing that you had when you were in the hospital? Like, you felt your grandfather's presence around you, and then it was like just this instant knowing that everything was going to be okay, and this moment was going to change your life forever?
It was. And I've said this to people before that, it's interesting. It's like when we're at our most vulnerable, we also tend to be at our clearest, because it's like the universe has come along and it's leveled us. It's pulled the carpet out from underneath our feet, and we have no choice but to stop. And if we're at all in any kind of alignment, we're going to stop and we're going to listen, because that's when the universe is literally taking us by our shoulders and saying, shaking us a little bit and saying, okay, look, it's time to shift gears. It's time to walk down a bit of a different path. And then, the whys of that path, or the hows of that path, tend to reveal themselves incrementally. I mean, that's really been my experience of it. For some people, it might, just hit them over the head with one big wallop. But, for me, and I think a lot of people, it tends to, when the universe grabs you by your shoulders in that way, you tend to get, incremental guidance, if you will.
And do you feel like everybody has that experience in their life? I'll share something that I've thought about, and when I tell people, they tend to roll their eyes at me. But I read that book by Dr. Eben Alexander, Proof of Heaven, and he talks about his near-death experience where he was in a coma, I think, for 7 days. And over that time, he crossed over and he had this incredible experience. And when he came back, it was, life-changing for him. And I remember thinking, wow, like I want an experience like that. And I was sharing with my wife, in fact, I said, gee, this is going to sound really weird, but it'd be kind of cool to have a near-death experience, because then all of these really cool things might open up and I'd be able to experience the types of things that Dr. Alexander did. And, I know that's not sometimes I struggle like, well, I know that's not a normal thought to have, and it's not like I wish anything terrible upon myself to go through, an experience like that. But when you hear about the outcomes, sort of the aftermath of those types of experiences, I can't be the only one out there that's thinking, well, gee, it would be really cool to have at least some kind of experience in my life that would really open me up and make me more sensitive to receiving more and more and more.
Oh my gosh, for sure. I think that's actually completely normal. It's our yearning for what I would call a mystical experience. And, I think, some people are prone to mystical experiences. I've had several of them, so I tend to be prone to them. But I don't think you need to have a mystical experience in order to have the universe come and shake you by the shoulders. A car accident can be a mystical experience. A relationship ending can be a mystical experience. And, something new beginning can be a mystical experience. Really, they're all mystical experiences. It's when we decide to sort of look back in on ourselves. We sort of sit in that position as the witness to our own lives, and we say, something big is going down here. Something big is unraveling here. And when you can look at that and recognize that something big is or significant is unraveling, that's the mystical experience. That's you seeing that something is opening within you.
Yeah, that's powerful. And it's almost like you need that initial spiritual awakening to kind of be aware enough to recognize those things, right? Because there are a lot of us, and I can speak for myself, but before I started going through this awakening process, that I wasn't that observer. I what I saw in front of my eyes was reality, and and thankfully I've gotten to a place where I know that's not the truth anymore. And so in those types of situations, I might be more inclined to be aware of sort of those mystical experiences, where in the past I probably would have just been oblivious to it, even if there was something mystical happening.
Yeah, for sure. I think for a time, most of us are oblivious to it. We grow up as children where, we are the center of our own universes, and and we need to be for a while, because we need to develop healthy, stable egos, and we need those egos for a certain time. And so, we just meet life in a certain way. And, for most of us, and this may be a different thing for the new little children that are coming to this earth, and that's a whole other topic. But, for most of us, we need to sort of be hit over the head a little bit. We need, we need that catalyst. We need something to really come around and shake us a little bit. And then we sort of look around and we say, oh, okay, something's happening here.
And isn't that true about most things in life, Ann? Sometimes we just need to get hit over the head to wake us up to things that are going on. And, whether it be things in the workplace, or just anything, right? Sometimes we all need a wake-up call to be like, wow, like how was I, how have I been blind to this the whole time? So it's, anyway, boy, we could really have a spirited conversation about, pardon the pun, about spiritual awakening and so on and so forth, and maybe we will in a future cast. But let's get into the topic today. Let's talk a little bit about spirit guides. So, Ann, what are spirit guides, and does everybody have one?
So, spirit guides, when our souls decide to incarnate, meaning, come into physical form and come here and have a human experience. We do not come alone, thank God, because that would be, really difficult. We come with a gang. We come with a spiritual gang full of guides that, if you want to sort of think about it as a board of directors, really. So before we're even born, we sit down as souls and we say, okay, we're going to go and we're going to have this experience. We're going to, incarnate as, a female, and we're going to go to, let's say, Switzerland, and we're going to choose those two lovely people to be our parents. And, we gather a gang of guides, and these beings are beings who typically have done the human experience enough and have done it to the point where they've really gotten the hang of it. And so now it's their job to guide those of us that are still going through this human experience. And so, we may come with a number of guides, and really all of us come with a number of guides. So yes, everyone comes with guides. No one comes here alone. This place is far too difficult to pop into on our own. We just wouldn't do it. And, they come here with us to literally do what their name is. They help to guide us. So whether we're aware of them or not, they're here, they're with us. They might come to us in dreams. They might come to us in any number of forms in order to help us along the way. But yes, we all have them, and their sole purpose is to be with us. And I know from communicating with my own guides, from communicating with other people's guides, they love us tremendously. It would be no different from someone having their own child. They just love us unconditionally, and they are really here to help us open up and wake up.
That's fascinating. And for those who aren't familiar with what Ann was talking about in regards to, before we come here and incarnate on Earth or wherever we incarnate, picking what type of person we're going to be, what our gender is, what our life experience is going to be, Google the term soul families, and you'll find a lot of information about that process. And there are a lot of fantastic books out there to explore. So really interesting topic. Ann, so you mentioned talking to and communicating with your spirit guides, and that everybody has spirit guides. And so one of the things I think were those of us who are going through a spiritual awakening who haven't really experienced, say, purposeful communication with a spirit guide. We often hear people who, and I'm speaking personally here because I'm relatively new in this whole awakening process, but we hear folks who, like you who mentioned, I talk to my spirit guide and I see my spirit guide, whether it be in a dream or in a meditation. And sometimes it's like, wow, I want to experience that. Like, how do I connect with my spirit guide, and what's the best method for me to do so? Do you have any tips on that, Ann, of ways that people can connect with their spirit guide or guides for that matter?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, they really want us all to connect with them. We're like their children. They absolutely love it when we become aware of them. And so in order to even sort of open that door, it's literally just asking. So everything within the universe is really about intention. And so you can however you want to do it. It doesn't have to be anything formal. It doesn't have to be even through meditation, although sometimes that makes it easier because, you sort of in meditation drop out, down out of thought and into the body. Because again, communicating with your spirit guides wouldn't really be a cerebral process. It's not really done through the mental chatter in your mind. It's really more of a felt process. And so, for someone who's wanting to start having a conscious relationship, because you've always had the relationship, but now we're talking about having a conscious relationship with your spirit guides. And so really that is just done through intention. And so you may need to intend that every day for a while. If I were, and I don't really even remember how I started. Actually, I do remember my initial sort of foray into knowing that I had a spirit guide around me. And of course we have several. But I was 17 years old, and I was working at the marina at where my cottage is for the summer. So I was living at the cottage by myself, and, my dad was there on the weekends, but during the week I was there by myself. And I was at the marina one day, and it was during the week, and it was like just dead there. There was no one around. And the next thing I knew, it was just sort of me. Like there was no car had pulled up into the parking lot. No boat had pulled up into the dock to get gas or anything. And seemingly out of nowhere, this older man appeared. And I remembered thinking, oh, where did this guy come from? And then I just sort of dropped the thought, and he came over to me, and he was so friendly. He looked like something out of Golden Pond. And, he said, hi, how's it going? And I said, oh, I'm good. How are you? And, we started chatting a bit, and, we weren't really chatting about anything. But he was really kind, and he was really sweet. And he said to me, I've got something for you. And I said, oh, okay. And he pulled out, I'm in Canada, so we have a coin called a loonie, and that's our version of a dollar bill. So he pulled out this coin, a loonie, and he said, I want to give you something. And I said, okay. And I held out my hand, and he went to give it to me. And then he pulled his hand back, and he said, but you have to promise me something. And I said, okay. And he said, you can't ever spend it because it's for luck. And I said, I won't. And he said, do you promise me? And I said, I promise you. And he gave me the coin, and I put it in my pocket. And I turned around, I excused myself from the conversation for a minute. I turned around, and when I came back, he was gone. And about a year ago, he came to me in a dream, and he said, I've been with you your whole life. I'm one of your guides. And he said, I just had to come in person. So they can actually come in person. They can pop in to the physical realm very temporarily. And when that happens, because you feel like you're talking almost, you might say, that person seemed like an angel to me, or that person seemed otherworldly to me. And so, in speaking of how might they appear to you, they might actually appear to you.
That is mind-blowing. I'm literally sitting here with my jaw dropped as you're sharing that story, because I think and I think those are sometimes, some of us need those sort of surreal though very real experiences in order to kind of to really bring it home that that's what just happened. Because had your spirit guide not appeared to you in a dream later on, right, and reinforced that was him, you might never have connected the dots, right?
Exactly. But even so, at the time when I was 17 and, maybe a little more awake than other 17-year-olds, but still not really. Even at the time, I knew there was something, there was a quality to that interaction and to that who I thought was a person, just a regular person. that seemed sort of out of this world. I didn't see him come and I didn't see him leave. And he just kind of sparkled. But like, as you say, Adam, I received that confirmation about a year ago, and it was just like, oh, of course you were. And when spirit talks to you, you don't question it. You don't sort of sit back later and say, was I making that up? You just know. And so that was a very cool experience.
That is super cool. Sometimes I think, and one of my biggest challenges is I'm an overthinker. I overthink everything. And, one of the questions that I always kind of have is whether it applies to spirit guides or our higher selves, because I'll oftentimes go into meditation and I get deep, and then I will go inside, as you mentioned, and, whether it's a room that I go to that has a light on and I sit and I talk to the universe or to my higher self or to my spirit guide, then there becomes sort of the next step, which is just waiting and listening, right? And waiting to hear something. And so, Anne, from your perspective, how do you, and I know you say you just know, right? But to someone who's new to this, how does someone who's new to this know whether it is spirit or it is their self talk filter, if you will, or their own intuition, or because we all have that voice inside of our mind, inside of our head, and when we ask a question, say in meditation, how do we know when it's ourselves giving us those answers or it's coming from someplace higher?
Yeah, because our mind, or we'll just, for the sake of this conversation, we'll say our ego can really, it can really dupe us, right? It can, and my ego does it all the time. And I'm like you, I'm an overthinker. But you start to know sort of there are some real subtle and sometimes not so subtle differences. So I know when it's my mind because my mind can be bossy. My mind can be fearful. My mind can be really directive, like do this, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. Spirit never comes in that way. And, for me, there's just a different quality to the energy, where your ego might shout, spirit often whispers. Where your ego might have an urgency to it, spirit is incredibly patient and present. Where there might be fear coming from your thoughts, there's never, ever, ever any fear coming from spirit or a spirit guide. It's just because the guides that are with us are of a higher vibration. Their energy has raised to the point that now they're here really as teachers and they're guiding us. They really sit in this unbelievable unconditional love. And so when they're communicating with us, whether it's, like you said, if you're in a meditation and they come in a meditation, if they come to you in a dream, sometimes they come through a song on the radio. I'll ask for guidance on something and I'll be in my car and I'll turn, to a different station on the radio and there is a lyrics, there's a set of lyrics that comes through and you just know. And so I would say look for really gentle, really loving, really patient, really soft energy that's coming through. And that tends to be the energy of what is guiding us. That tends to be the energy of spirit.
Interesting. So then when we think about that, Anne, does that mean that, say, spirit guides, they're not necessarily going to give us a prescriptive answer to something, but they're more so going to, as you kind of alluded to, kind of push us along and give us hints, but they're not. So if we, like we're interviewing for a job, let's just say, and we're just not sure if that's the job to take, and we're in meditation, or we're just talking to our spirit guides aloud or in our mind, and we say, hey, I'm not sure what I should do if I get this offer. Should I take it or should I not take it? Is it one of those things where we would expect that we're not going to get a direct yes or no from spirit guide, but we're just going to get signs that might help guide us to the right answer on that?
Yeah, you know what? The guidance is I would say most often really subtle, because they want us to do the legwork. They're not really. I mean, they're still learning as guides because the whole universe is in a constant state of evolution. So it's not like that evolution or that learning ever stops, but because we're like in, elementary school here, we're really, really learning. And so they sort of want us to be able to come to it ourselves. However, I would say that at times, because I know this has been my experience at times, that they will come in and they will say, maybe not say, but sort of the feeling, because for a lot of people it comes in as a feeling. It depends on how your extrasensory input is set up. So some people are seers, some people are feelers, some people just know, some people hear. So depending on how you take in extrasensory information, it might come in for you through a knowing. And at times, they're a little more direct. And they're a little more direct often, I have found, when we're really being shaken up. When, if we are really sitting in some deep confusion, or we've been walking down a path that we know, because we always know, right? We always know, because we have a soul within us that has, this blueprint for our life. And so, if we're just making, turns in our lives that are just, taking us nowhere, or, we're ignoring the signals or what have you, they might take us by the shoulders with a little more strength. And, and that might come in the form of a dream that packs a little more of a punch, or, something just might feel a little more intense. So yes, to answer your question, most of the guidance that we get, in my experience, it's quite subtle, but they can pack a bit more of a punch when they need to as well.
Now, that's fascinating. That's so interesting. Is someone that sometimes questions whether or not I've heard from my spirit guides or not. Again, I'm always in my head. I tend to do a lot of research and a lot of reading, and just trying to learn more about how the different things work, right? Because part of knowing when something's happening is being able to recognize it. And so one of the things that I've read recently, which I found interesting, and I'd love to get your perspective on, is I read that spirit guides won't intervene or guide, let's just say, unless we ask them to do so. What is your take on that?
It's hard to know when we're asking or not, right? Mm-hmm. Because, we often, again, so if we look at the catalyst view of waking up, so, which means, we come to a crossroads of some kind, or we've become deeply challenged by something, or we even come into a crisis. A lot of times people really wake up when they hit a massive crisis. And so it's hard to know. I think we actually ask for help at times when we don't even realize we're asking for help, because it's actually just built into our survival instincts. It's built into our DNA that we sort of reach out for help. So you might be a person that has a really hard time asking other people in your life for help. And I know I've been that person, but I will often sort of catch myself going in and saying, like, I can't do this on my own anymore. Or, have you ever found yourself saying, I just can't keep doing this anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't keep doing this anymore. And that in and of itself is really a call for help. And so we might not be aware that we're consciously asking for help, but they're right there. And so even when we find ourselves in a situation where we think, I don't know what the heck to do here. Like, I don't know if I should go left, if I should go right, if I should go up or down. I have no idea. Even that process, that thought process right there, as you sort of heard in the words, it's a plea for help. And so they come in. That's when they come in. They just need a little opening. But yes, you're right. I mean, that is the free will part of our existence, is we can sort of clap our hands over our ears or, put our hands over our eyes and say, I don't want to see. I don't want to see. And they'll say, okay, we'll sit back. We're still here. We're still here. Our energy is still guiding you, but we won't fully walk in until you say, okay, I just don't think I can do this on my own anymore. And then they walk in.
That brings up a really interesting question to layer on top of that, which is, even in human life, when we talk to other humans, right, to other people, sometimes we ask for help, but we're really not open to accepting the help, right? We're just asking for it. But when the help comes, we may not be ready or willing even to accept the help truly. And so if we flip that to the spiritual side and say even consciously we do reach out to our spirit guides for help and guidance, if we're not truly open to receiving that help, meaning our egos are in the way and we're just going to trust our ego and lean on our ego, will spirit guides still step in and provide that assistance, or will they sort of know that, hey, this person's, doesn't matter what we do right now, this person's not open to it, so we need to wait until they're a little bit more sort of open to us helping? Is that what are your thoughts on that, Ann?
Again, I think that it depends on the individual journey, but as we're all geared to, just from an evolutionary point of view, as we're all geared to evolve and wake up, our souls have really agreed to come here and do just that. So we might appear as if we are sort of head down, tunnel vision. I don't need anyone or anything. I'm just going to keep, despite all of the warning bells that may be going off, outside of me, inside of me. I'm going to, and you and I both know people like that, right? We know people that just appear to be sort of head down, and I am not going to listen to anyone or anything.
Yep.
In which case, because they are too still geared for waking up, because we all have a soul inside of us. We're all just geared that way. At some point, the plan will have been built into that person's path to stumble upon themselves in some way, and the guides will be there. The love, the gentle, prodding will be there. So they're always there. But yes, there is a real difference between, consciously asking for help or consciously asking for a relationship with our guides. When we do that, they just sort of come roaring in and they say, "Yay!" It's like a big party for them. It's like, we've been waiting our whole lives for you to sort of turn back, and yay! Thank you for looking at me and acknowledging my presence. So, but again, you and I are from our human point of view, thinking from human linear lines, and the universe does not work in that way. So we can never really know how they might get our attention and what they might do, because it just depends on the path that someone's walking.
That is some really good insight, Ann. That is phenomenal. That is really phenomenal. So I want to ask you one more question as it relates to spirit guides, but maybe we can even extend it outside of just spirit guides into, in general, things about spirituality, and even to some extent, as you mentioned earlier, to more of the mystical side of things. And it's going to lean a little bit on your area of expertise, which is surrender. And so as I mentioned, in all fairness, Ann and I were chatting for a few minutes before the podcast, just catching up. And I shared with Ann that I'm reading a book called Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender by Dr. David Hawkins. And it's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. A good friend recommended it to me just recently. And one of the things that Dr. Hawkins talks in the book about, Ann, is surrendering desire. It's one of the things that one of the emotions, or one of the our mental constructs, if you will, that we have, right? We desire things, right? We desire a bigger house, or we desire a better job, or whatever that might be. And, according to Dr. Hawkins, his point of view was, if we can learn to surrender that desire, right? We understand what the goal is. We write it down, and then we on a piece of paper, and then we throw it away, and we don't sweat it anymore. And the universe kind of opens itself up, and we start to receive those things that we desire, which is definitely a different approach to life than I've taken in the past. I'm typically the kind of person that's like, okay, I have a goal, and here's how I'm going to get there, and here's step 1, step 2, step 3, and I just, plow forward. But if we flip that on its head a little bit, Ann, and we think about it as it applies to spirituality, I feel like there are a lot of us out there that desire a stronger connection, say, to Earth, or a stronger connection to our higher selves or to the universe. And as I was reading this aspect of surrendering your desire, I started wondering, well, is this something to surrender as well? Is it something to say, yes, this is what I want. I want a closer relationship with the universe. I want to feel that closer relationship. I want to experience more of the mystical aspects of spirituality, etc., etc. But then once that's expressed, sort of just letting the universe go to work and stop trying to make things happen, and just trusting. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that if you have any.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Adam. I think as you have rolled out your conscious spiritual journey so far, because of course every single one of us is on a spiritual journey. It's just that the rubber really hits the road when we become conscious of that spiritual journey. And I think once you open that door consciously, you can't really close it again. Most of us really, on a conscious spiritual path, we could refer to ourselves as seekers, right?
Yep.
And, as seekers, we are seeking something. And for a really long time, that something feels like it's outside of ourselves. For a long time, we look up at the sky to pray to God, or we, look elsewhere to talk to our spirit guides, or, we just sort of, the thing that we're seeking is, the belief is that it's not already here. So from a surrendered, point of view, I think what can really start to shift at some point is that you start to realize that you are what you are seeking, and that all of the things that you are seeking, all of the realizations that you're seeking, all of the states of beings that you're seeking, the God that you are seeking, the spirit guides, and the relationship with those spirit guides that you are seeking, it's already here. It's already here. And so we start to, I guess where surrender can come in is letting go of any notion that we have to get anywhere, or that we even have to do anything. And knowing that it's really just a really small shift in awareness. So for me, one of the things that I do when I meditate is I try and most meditators will speak to this. I do my best to drop out of thought. And so for me, that's really about dropping sort of into my body, right? Into that, into the breath, and into that space in the body that is breathing me, that is, beating my heart, that is circulating the blood throughout my system, that is bringing the insight. It's the same energy that flips over the seasons in the seasonal parts of the world, that brings the buds back on the trees, that moves the planets around where they need to go. It's all that one energy. And so the shift in the shift in awareness is really, it's really quite subtle, but it's right there. It's right there in every single one of us. And so the surrender piece could really just be surrendering to what is already there. And so when you speak of desires, that's always so interesting because, I talk to a lot of people about, we come into these lives with what I call a living map or a blueprint that comes with our souls. And so you can't miss them. If something is meant to come to you, you literally can't miss it. You can't sidestep it. You can't avoid it. And if it's not part of your blueprint, you can, do all of the vision boards in the world. You can pray on it. You can meditate on it. You can, float in the air on it. It's just not in your wheelhouse in this life. And so surrender is so, so interesting. And it's just really a very slight shift in awareness.
And that was so deep. I'm still processing it all. And I love the way you articulated, through meditation and connecting with the breath, and, the same energy that pumps the blood through the body is the same energy that changes the seasons, right? I mean, think about that. Like, those of you who are listening, think about that. That same power, and maybe many of you already have, but I know there are people who are listening to this who have never considered that before. And just think of how powerful that is, that energy of the universe that we have in us is the same energy that moves the universe externally of us. And, if we get really metaphysical, there really isn't anything externally of us, right? We're all the universe. We're all made of the universe experiencing itself, right? Through each of our individual experiences here while we're alive on Earth, and that can get pretty deep and philosophy and conversation as we go through that. But that is just so deep. Thank you, Ann. That I'm gonna definitely listen to this podcast again and digest all of the incredible information you provided us today. So, Ann, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time and spending with us on the show today, and any final words, Ann? Anything you'd like to share in the last few seconds that we have together?
No, just to thank you so much, Adam, for doing this. I think this is amazing. I think it's timely. I think people are hungry for this information, and it was just such a pleasure to talk to you. And it was great just having such a spirited, soulful conversation. I loved it.
Well, ditto, and I certainly hope that we can do this again. Again.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, excellent. So everybody heard it. Ann agreed. So so now we're going to hold her to it. So ladies and gentlemen, this was Ann Jarvis of Soulful Surrender. Again, please check out her website at soulfulsurrender.com. She's got a lot of great information on her website, and she offers fantastic services, as we mentioned in the beginning. One of especially as Ann was speaking to towards the end of the podcast, helping others access the blueprints of their souls, and may we all recognize that blueprint, and may we all access them, and really just follow the path that we've chosen to do so before we even came into this life. So, Ann, many thanks, and have a fantastic rest of your week, and we look forward to speaking with you again very, very soon.
Thank you. You too, Adam.
Thanks for listening to the SpiritWoke podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check out our website, SpiritWoke.com, and connect with the SpiritWoke community on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search SpiritWoke. Join us next time for another edition of the SpiritWoke podcast. Namaste.